I am so pleased that all of you here today and those watching on Metro Channel 3 have chosen to help us celebrate this form of government and public transportation's role in this government. I would like to welcome one of the co-chairs of Metro at 50, a year-long celebration. We have Metro government's first Vice Mayor, George Cate, is here in the front row. Thank you very much for being with us. And the other two co-chairs who could not be with us today are State Senator Thelma Harper and First Amendment Center founder John Siegenthaler. I'd also like to give a special welcome to our Mayor, Carl Dean. Without his leadership and support, the resurgence of public transportation in Nashville and all of Middle Tennessee would simply not be happening. We'll hear from Mayor Dean a little later in the program. Mayor Dean, thank you for being with us today. And I'd now like to introduce the board chair of the Nashville Metropolitan Transit Authority, Mr. Freddie O'Connell. Mr. O'Connell is in his third year as board chair, and we have been very fortunate to have his wisdom and guidance during a period of service improvements and expansions which have resulted in dramatic ridership increases. Please welcome Mr. Freddie O'Connell to the podium.
Thanks, Paul, and it has been a true privilege to serve with Paul and his staff who, he is not joking. He keeps a stopwatch in his pocket to make sure at any given moment that everything is running on time, and that's how our board meetings run, that's how our buses run, and it's wonderful to watch him and his managerial operation. So welcome to Music City Central. For those of you who haven't been here before, it's amazing. This place still feels new to me, despite the fact that we've been operating out of this facility for 5 years now. I wanted to actually just take a minute to recognize one of our past board members who is here, Ed Collins, who preceded me on the board, as well as Louis Levine and Marion Ott, who I serve with today. I also serve with Jeff Yarbrough and Gail Williams, who couldn't be here with us this morning, but it is really a pleasure, privilege, and honor to serve as a civic volunteer of our Metro government at the request of its current steward, Mayor Carl Dean. And I'm looking forward to today's program, including the amazing stories I'm sure we're going to hear from this panel. And I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you for being with us. And I'll turn it back over to Paul. Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you very much. I'd like to take a moment now to introduce our guest panelists. And we've actually already had a lot of fun with this. We got together about 7 or 8 days ago, and these are all individuals who worked for MTA or its predecessor, and we said, well, let's see what we can talk about at the event. And we had to cross off several stories that we talked about, I'll tell you right now. Maybe they'll talk to you later and give you some of the background. But let me start on this end. We'll start with ladies first. Frances Hunter. Frances came to work in 1962, and she was director of maintenance. She was involved in purchasing, inventories, and grants. So she has a great background. Ben Purnell, to her right, worked as director of transportation, and he also came to work in 1962 and was here until 1994. Rusty Watts, William Rusty Watts, came to work in 1959. So he's got some really long stories from back in the early days as a bus operator. And then Cecil Robinson on the end. 1962, there must have been something going on in 62 because that's the year he started too. But he was worked in the maintenance department and became a bus operator. 1963, 50 years ago, was a difficult year for public transportation. Ridership was in a steady decline. Automobile usage was increasing. The integration of public transportation in Nashville had been accomplished peacefully a few years earlier and did not result in the large-scale abandonment of its services by its passengers as occurred in Montgomery, Birmingham, or Jackson, Mississippi. President Eisenhower's National Defense Highway System, on the other hand, and an improving system of local roads and an increasingly robust automobile manufacturing industry, however, did combine to hasten that passenger decline. The four people I just introduced, and who we'll now hear from, were on the front lines of the battle to preserve public transportation for Nashville's future. And we thank them now for their service then, which has allowed us in 2013 to continue to build our network of services and to provide close to 11 million passenger trips in the current fiscal year. The slideshow beside me and the large photographs you'll see around the room and in the hallways have been prepared especially for this event to help put into perspective for you the look of the people, places, and the services that they provided in 1963, 50 years ago. So let me start with Frances. And Frances is a pioneer. Frances was a female manager some 50 years ago, and we had some interesting discussions a week ago. And she was started in the accounts receivable, worked in the parts room. Frances, what can you tell us about what it was like to be a woman in transit management 50 years ago?
Well, it was very interesting. I went from working with all women to working with all men, and it is a different transition. However, it was a wonderful transition. You just have to pay attention to what they say, and you have to be able to work with them in a way that you don't be overbearing. You ask them for help, and they'll give you help. I went from, as I say, the accounting department to the storeroom and the purchasing department. The storeroom was very different from any storeroom today. It was very dimly lit. The bins were running exactly opposite from what they should have been from the parts window. There was even some vermins in there. There were rats and snakes occasionally, and you had to have a flashlight to go get the parts. It was so dimly lit. But in a few months after I went over there, they completely remodeled, new bins were put in, new lights were put in, and then we could see. It was wonderful. It was just amazing transition for me, because I had always thought that I would be in the accounting department, and when I was offered the opportunity to go to the storeroom, I thought, well, why not? I know a little bit about cars. I grew up on a farm, and I knew how to change a tire. I knew how to change oil. I knew all of that. So how much difference can a bus be? But I soon found out that it was a lot different. I really read parts manuals. I studied all of the maintenance manuals so that I would know a little bit when I went out to get parts for mechanics. I was accepted, and it became a great career for me. And as Paul said, I've done a lot of things for MTA, and I'm very thankful to have had the opportunity to do that. I've had a great ride with purchasing in stores and maintenance and all of the things that I've done.
Great. And Frances is actually back now on a part-time basis, helping us out with some parts issues and so on. So some folks, just keep coming back, and we're very, very happy to have Frances, because everyone can go and say, now, Frances, do you remember? Oh, yes, I know where that is. In fact, I probably have those records at home. I saved them when they threw everything in the dumpster. She's responsible for a lot of the historical artifacts that we've been able to turn over to the Metro archives, recording the history of public transportation in Nashville. So we have a lot of fun with Frances. Let me move on and talk to Cecil for a minute. Cecil, you're also a pioneer in public transportation, one of the first African-American bus operators. You started working in the maintenance department as a general helper and eventually became a bus operator. One of the things we talked about was the manager who promoted you had an interesting name and an interesting background. Tell us about that when you actually got promoted to bus operator. And
Actually, I came to MTA in '62, I believe, around about April, May of '62, which I started as over in the garage and maintenance department, cleaning up buses. They had a shift on 7 at night to 3 in the morning. Finally rolled down off the 3 o'clock shift to day from 4 to 4, which consists of steam cleaning the buses, sweeping the buses out, changing tires and flats. During that time, we had inner tubes and tires, and I think they're all tubeless tires now. We also had to keep the floors clean, whatever was wrong with the buses, it had to be cleaned up, steam cleaned, and parts and things for the mechanics and things to work on. And I guess maybe about 12 or 13 months during the time the boss, Mr. Hall, L.E. Hall,
What was his nickname, though?
Zero, Happy Hall.
Yeah, but you have to explain to people what the zero means.
Well, it meant zero. It means you wouldn't have any accidents or nothing that day, and everything was gonna be number one.
Right. Right. So this was what people would go as
This
zero
was
accidents,
right
right?
here.
So
Simple
safety's always been
zero.
critical to us.
So if you see any of these old kids ever use this, you know what that means. Mr. Hall was a good man. You could go to him and tell him, say, look here, I need 25 to pay day. You give it to me. If you need that your car worked on, he let the mechanics work on it. If you needed a parts or tires, just asking me would make sure that you would get what you wanted. And another thing, during the time, they furnished all the maintenance men work clothes. We had rain suits, rain caps, or rubber overshoes, and during that time, they would buy you shoes. You'd go down to see us whenever you needed shoes. Of course, Frances for me with that because she probably ordered quite a few of that stuff. And anytime you had done wrong, Mr. Hall would always leave word for you to see him in his office. And whenever he would tell you to bring a cup of coffee with you, you knew you were in for some wrong situation.
Good.
We had a special chair, I think the chair was red, I believe it was, right?
Yes.
It was red in color. He would sit you down there in that chair, he would get you upside down, all kind of ways. Sometimes he tell you, you are now fired. The time he get those places down, then he tell you, now you get up, go back to work. I think one guy, he fired by twice in one day. But nevertheless, they ought to be promoted from maintenance to operator. Ever realized we had to make change during that time. Certain routes, you had to have extra change. What you could get what they call a pole boy, where they would allow you to get an extra $25 to run the route, something like Jefferson or Armstrong, those places. Anytime they come in with dollar bill, I mean, you had your change it there, your change it to be set. Well, maybe if you want to set it on like 3/4, 2 down to nickel, all you had to do is parts it and you'll come on out. Nevertheless, there's another maintenance man. Oh, that Mr. McNally again? McNally would sit there and you think he wasn't thinking about you. He was looking dead at you and he put one of the fingers on until you come in his office. The way you do, he would always check your box and see if you had your $75. And if you didn't have $75, he'd let you know what he'd do. You come in there with a $20 bill, some kind of way, he would mark that 20, and then you go back out. And somebody else thinks that they'd be called in, they probably ask for that 20 to use it. Then when they go in and you go in and check that 20, and tell you, so look here, this 20's been in here 3 times.
Yeah, and this is exactly the way our conversation went. This went on forever and ever a week ago, and we didn't want them to stop because there were such great stories. Let me go ahead and ask, shift it over to Rusty for a minute. And Rusty Watts is the senior member of our panel. As I said earlier, came to work in, was it 57 or 59?
59.
59, okay.
I think I said 57 the other day, but I think it's 59.
Well, I think I got my notes wrong. But one of the things that you talked about was the type of buses that you operated back in, at the time that Metro government was being formed. There was a 900 series of buses that you told us some interesting stories about. Can you share that, the 900 series stories?
Well, it's just, they were smaller buses. What they were used for when they bought them was, at that time, they didn't go any further than city limits. Well, they had little shuttle buses to carry from there on out into the country, we called it then. But they were small buses. They was, I would say about a 30 passenger bus, somewhere around there, 25, 30, I don't know exactly, but out there you could maybe drive for a mile and a half, and wouldn't have shift gears. But when they brought them in here, done away with them, and they brought them in for the regular buses, they would put them on the real short routes. We had one they called South 7th that went across Chevy Street, different ones like that. But you set up on, the driver was set up on a platform like almost forward. It's about a foot and a half tall. The seat was sitting on that. And the gear shift was down on the floor with a long stick. But everything was fine until you had to shift gears to second gear. Then you had to hold on to the steering wheel and go over like this. And if you didn't watch, you'd wind up in the floor. And it was embarrassing, really. You wouldn't much more get out of the second gear till somebody would ring a bell to get off, or you stop. And you had to go all the way back to first again and go through the same routine again every time. It was a real interesting ride. You could sit and watch the driver do all that.
And of course,
Wasn't too funny to the driver though.
and then of course you went to automatics, and that helped a lot.
Oh yeah.
Automatic transmission. Well, one of the other things that you talked about was an interesting concept, and that was the owl runs.
Yes, sir.
Can you tell us what those were and how it worked?
Well, we had 4 of them. The last, what they call the last lineup left downtown, the last regular bus left downtown at 11:30, I believe it was, at night. But after that, we had a bus that would go to Inglewood and all of East Park, one bus, and then we'll have one bus that would go to West Park, and have one bus that would go to Radnor. And they would just make 3 trips a night. But they cover all the territories around. And the last trip, on each one of them, I don't know what's the last one, but the last I had would be to get bus drivers could ride it, it would be get the bus coming in at 4:30. And it was real interesting because I would ride it all every day. I'd ride it, catch it when it left the end of the line. I'd ride the yards, or railroad yards was the end of the line. And they would bring us in there. And Mr. Purnell told us, he was the one that told us about the guy that drove the Allen bus that didn't know how to drive a car. He drove the Allen bus until he retired. They had to learn him how to drive a car. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't tell you, if you don't mind, I'd like to, is how I got my job.
All right. I think.
It'll take a second to do that, because I was a ball player. And come up to where we played National Transit had a team, and it was in a tournament, city tournament. And we played National Transit. And the guy that I was raised up with, I was raised up with his son, Jimmy Johnson. Anybody around the bus company know who Jimmy Johnson was a manager. And we played them on Tuesday night, I believe it was. We beat them, which I can hold my head up over Jimmy and laugh about that. But Jimmy came to me after the ball game, I wanted to know if I'd be interested in driving a bus. Well, I had 4 kids and didn't have a real good job. I said, man, if you give me a job, I'd play ball all year round for you.
Sounds like an NCAA violation to me.
But anyway, he told me to be with the bus coming the next morning. And he'd take me back to see Mr. Hall, which he did. And we went in and he introduced me to Mr. Hall. He said, you don't have to introduce me to him. I was at the ball game last night. I know who he is. But anyway, Mr. Hall, he was talking about was called Happy. Was his nickname, Zero to Happy. And he had me fill out an application, and him and Jimmy sat over and talked a few minutes. And I got through with it, he looked at it. He pulled out a drawer and he said, you know, Jim, it's not like to hire him. I said, just look at this stack application. And he reached under and set them on the table and put mine on top. He said, that many applications? What hit it you? Well, type Jimmy was, he just reached over and got it, flipped it over. Now he's on top.
That's a good one. So we recruited a ball player, and you also drove a bus. Well, that's great. Thank you for sharing that with us. We hadn't heard that one before. Well, let's shift over to Ben for just a minute. And Ben, we are in Music City Central Station, which is a great facility. We moved from Dedrick Street 4.5 years ago. It'll be 5 years this October, actually, since we moved into this facility, got off Dedrick Street. But Ben was telling us about the earlier shelters that were over at Legislative Plaza. And can you share with us about what it was like over on Legislative Plaza with the shelters and so on, and how the customers use those facilities?
It was where the Legislative Plaza is now, but Capitol Boulevard ran through, so they had shelters on Capitol Boulevard and shelters on 6th. And they had heat in those shelters. They had electric heat across the top that was on the thermostat that came on. And I never knew exactly who maintained those things, but if one went out, we called Nashville Electric.
And they came, okay.
And they came. And so,
Were they adequate in size to serve the customers at the time?
well, it's an open air thing, but in real cold weather, they were up over your head, so you could stand on them. And yeah, you could feel them.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons that our customers like Music City Central Station so much, because we now have heated and air-conditioned waiting rooms and restrooms and ticket windows and all of that. One of the other programs you told us about was the providing strollers, which is kind of unique to Nashville. I had never heard that story. Baby strollers. Can you tell us how that worked?
Well, at that time, of course, all the big department stores were downtown. There was a lot of shopping downtown. And one of the problems they were having, of course, strollers didn't fold up then, and people would mess around with them trying to get them on the bus, so they decided to buy some strollers and give them out at Memorial Square. And all you had to do, if you got off the bus, go over and tell the supervisor you want a stroller, he'd give you a stroller, and you'd go shopping and bring it back, get on the bus and go home. And it worked very well.
Well, very good. Very good. All right. Well, there are more stories, but we'll reserve those for afterwards. So I'm sure our panelists will be happy to stay around and have some conversations with you after we turn the microphones off, because 50 years ago it was a pretty rollicking place, is my understanding. So, well, thank you very much to the members of the panel. Can we give them a round of applause? Because I think that really gives us a flavor of what it was like 50 years ago as Metro government was being formed. And the pictures, Happy Hall's picture was up there that a couple of them talked about. And we have some great photos around, so please look at them. Yesterday morning, Mayor Dean and I boarded the number 20 Scott bus at 7:30 in the morning at the start of the route in East Nashville. And we rode the bus into this facility a little after 8 a.m. He's been riding a different bus route with me almost every month since he was first elected mayor. Yesterday he distributed schedules, talked to passengers about the benefits of riding MTA. The passengers loved seeing him and so appreciated his meeting them on their own turf, so to speak. Mayor Dean has been a constant supporter of public transportation, and all of Nashville and Middle Tennessee owe him a deep debt of gratitude for his passion and leadership in the provision of metropolitan government services, including public transportation. Please welcome Mayor Dean.
Well, thank you, Paul, for that very kind introduction, and thank you to the panel for sharing these memories with us, and thank you for your service to the city. One of the things that I like the most about riding the bus, and I try to ride the bus a couple times a week, my normal number 7 route, is that the bus drivers and the people you encounter are so friendly, so professional, so considerate, that it really gets your day off to a great start. So when you get on the bus, there's already this sense that folks know each other, people know the driver, like the driver. and get a little disappointed, Paul, whenever there's a change of drivers. And so that is the human element, which I think we're really need to celebrate and talk about of great metro agencies such as MTA is just vital. And I think this panel represents that fact very, very well. When I realized that Metro would turn 50 during the time that I was mayor, I wanted to celebrate it in a big way. So I asked some friends of mine, John Siegenthaler, Senator Thelma Harper, and George Cate, to chair this effort. And I didn't just pick the first people that came to mind to lead this effort. I picked people who knew about Metro government, who knew what it took to get this government created, and I picked people who are invested in it. And for about a year now, we've been very busy meeting and planning events and giving speeches and sitting on panels and doing everything we can to highlight the uniqueness of our government. I wanted to educate newcomers and young people about what we have here. I wanted to bring back memories for those who watched this new government unfold 50 years ago, and frankly, I just wanted to have a party. We asked schools, community groups, congregations, metro departments to do something to mark this significant milestone. This program today, with the panel giving their accounts of our transportation system 50 years ago, is a perfect way to enlighten us and also entertain at the same time. Thanks, Paul, for the great program, and let me thank those retirees again for doing this. Right now, I want to invite all of you to come to the Metro Courthouse on Saturday, April 6th, from 12 o'clock until 3 o'clock for the big birthday party we're having in the public square to celebrate Metro turning 50. It's going to be a great event with live music, food trucks, vendors, and exhibits. There'll be activities for kids and for dogs. It's an event for the whole family. So I hope to see you there on April 6th. Seeing the photographs in particular, as I was listening to the panel, makes us understand how far we progressed, but it also makes us understand that over time there were periods when public transportation was not as popular as it had been in other times. And I think we're in a sort of a new era now where public transportation is going into a period where the demand for it is going to increase, and most importantly, the need for it is going to be recognized, and it's going to be something that the city has to address. You know, one of the things that I think about a lot is that between now and 2035, the Middle Tennessee region, the 10 counties that form Middle Tennessee, is going to grow by about 1 million people. So the Middle Tennessee region in 2035 is essentially going to be the size of the Denver region now. And we need to be planning and working to find ways to provide the transit that is needed by our citizens to make sure that our growth is orderly, to make sure that we preserve quality of life, to give families and individuals choices about transit. And all of that takes forethought, all of that takes planning. I'm particularly struck by this photograph, which shows a bus-only lane, a dedicated lane for buses. And of course, the major transit project we're working on right now is the East-West Connector, which would be bus rapid transit connecting East Nashville to West Nashville, up by White Bridge Road, which would run on a dedicated lane. And I thought that was such a great novel idea until I saw this photograph. I mean, it's clear that folks for a long time have had a desire to get about the city in a way that is effective and efficient, and so this is a great illustration of that. Another thing that I would mention about the need for transit, not only in what it means to quality of life in terms of health, in terms of the environment, in terms of offering people choices, in terms of not always having to use a car, it's very important to our economy. When I go out and work on economic development projects, you know, the cities that I come across most frequently that we're competing with to attract people and also to attract business are Charlotte, North Carolina, and Austin, Texas. And it really shouldn't be lost on any of us that both of those cities in the last 3 years have started light rail projects, have made major investments. And for us to remain, and we will remain, a very competitive, attractive city, we need to be thinking along the same lines. And I think the bus rapid transit proposal that we have is particularly good because it's actually, I think, more flexible, but also cheaper, but accomplishes the same thing as light rail, and it's a major step forward. The other point I'd want to make is, you know, when we did Metro government, and George worked so hard on this 50 years ago, the idea of consolidating into one government 530 square miles, which is Davidson County, was pretty radical. And it was bringing together a geographic area that people didn't necessarily see it as one unit. But now, with the growth of Middle Tennessee, it's really incumbent upon us to be thinking even broader in terms of regionalism. When we meet in this room, the Mayor's Caucus for Middle Tennessee, all the mayors of the counties and cities in Middle Tennessee, probably the number one topic we discuss is transit. They face the same issues the other mayors that we face in terms of being able to get people to work, deliver goods, and do that in an efficient way. And so they are very interested in transit too, and connecting the region together and creating a stronger economic unit. You know, for all of these reasons, I think metropolitan government has served this city very well. It is really something that is very difficult to do, and it is really appropriate to acknowledge and thank the folks who worked on this 50 years ago. It's also appropriate for us to understand what we have and value what we have and keep it. And so the public education aspect of this is real important to me. But today is a celebration. Today is a celebration of all the folks who've worked so hard to make this city a great city, and all the folks who worked so hard to create this form of government, and all the folks who are doing the work now to keep this city moving forward. So I thank you all, and Paul, good job. Thanks.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, panel. Thank you, everyone who is here today. Our folks and on the panel will be around. They'll be happy to have some conversations. We have plenty of coffee and donuts. So please stick around and visit. Thank you very much, and have a great rest of the day. Thank you.